The whole country will have seen today that for all his boasts and utterly breathtaking complacency, the Chancellor is in complete denial about the central fact which is defining this government in office. That under this Chancellor, under this Prime Minister, under this Chancellor and this Prime Minister, for most people in our country, living standards aren't rising, Mr. Speaker, they are falling year on year on year. On average, working people in our country are £1,600 a year worse off than when they came into government in 2010. As for his promise to balance the books by 2015, didn't he confirm today that in 2015 he's not balancing the books, he's borrowing £79 billion, Mr. Speaker? For all his smoke and mirrors, he is borrowing £198 billion more than he planned in 2010. More borrowing to pay for 3 years of economic failure. More borrowing in just 3 years under this Chancellor than under the last government in 13 years, Mr. Speaker. He used to say he would balance the books in 2015. Now he wants us to congratulate him for saying he'll do it in 2019, Mr. Speaker. With this government, it's clearly not just the badgers that move the goalposts, Mr. Speaker. Can he confirm that when the energy companies have already announced price rises of £120 this year, his policy will still see energy prices rise by £70 this winter? Mr. Speaker, under this Chancellor, the only freeze this winter will be for millions of families and pensioners struggling to heat their homes with rising bills. Does he really think he can get away with tinkering at the edges, moving green levies his own party introduced off the bills and onto the taxpayer, and, surprise, surprise, letting the energy companies completely off the hook, Mr. Speaker? We all know and agree that rising life expectancy means we're going to have to work longer. And that the Chancellor's failure on growth and the deficit means more tough spending decisions in the next Parliament. But when the country is crying out for a government that will work with business to promote investment, wealth creation and build an economy that works for the many and not just a few, does this Chancellor really think he can get away with tinkering at the edges, letting the free market rip and waiting for the wealth to trickle down? What he's announced on youth unemployment is too little too late. Help only for the under-21s only happening in the last weeks of this government in 2015. Why isn't he being more ambitious? Why won't he repeat the successful tax on bank bonuses to pay for a compulsory job for all young people, a job they'll take or lose? Why won't he remove the winter allowance from the richest 5% of pensioners? And, Mr. Speaker, why won't he reverse his tax cut for hedge funds, protect disabled people in our country by scrapping the unfair and perverse bedroom tax this Prime Minister introduced? Even after what he's announced today on fuel duty and his increases in the personal allowance, his VAT rise, his cuts to tax credits, his cuts to child benefit mean that on average families with children are worse off because of his budgets. That's the truth, Mr. Speaker. Giving with one hand, taking away much, much more with the other. With bank bonuses rising and millionaires enjoying a big tax cut, this is a policy which is working for a few, Mr. Speaker. But as this autumn statement shows, with this out-of-touch Chancellor and Prime Minister, hard-working people are worse off under the Tories, Mr. Speaker.